Liubov Velychko is a Ukrainian investigative journalist with over 15 years of experience uncovering corruption, crime, and human rights violations. She specializes in exposing disinformation campaigns and has conducted numerous investigations into Russian propaganda, revealing the networks behind its spread and dismantling the information operations orchestrated by Russian intelligence agencies. Before jumping, thank you to everyone who supports the channel and everyone who supports Ukraine this year. I'm delighted to be able to continue sharing these conversations with you over the holiday period and, of course, make the commitment that we will be doing them next year as well. So the fight against Russian disinformation, the fight against Russian lies and aggression goes on, unfortunately. And as long as it does, we will still be here bringing Ukrainian voices to you. Lyubov, welcome back. I should say, this is not the first time you're on the channel, so if people enjoyed this, they should go back and see our previous conversations as well.
Hi, Jonathan. Hello to everyone, and I hope everything which I told in previous series was useful for you. And today I also will try to be as useful as possible.
I'm sure it will be. I think your insights are fabulous, and I know you live and breathe this struggle against Russian disinformation. It seems to me now, and I may be wrong in this, that actually a lot of the narratives don't really stick in Ukraine because there's a certain level of understanding. And that understanding also comes from being under a hail of drones and missiles and bombs, etc. That reality kind of dispels some of the Russian psychological information operations. But it seems they are no less strong in Western countries now than they were at the start of the full-scale war. In fact, in some ways, through experimentation and through testing different narratives and activating different figures, Russian narratives seem stronger now than they were 4 years ago, and that's worrying. Am I wrong about you sort of Ukraine having a certain level of immunization against this? And am I wrong about the West succumbing to these narratives and not developing immunization?
I know, Jonathan. Unfortunately, Europe still doesn't know or doesn't want to realize what it needs to do to stop the Russian influence on such a huge level as Russians have right now. Because Ukraine already shown on its own example that during 11 years of full-scale invasion of Russians to Ukraine, like very gentle steps trying to stop Russian propaganda, which were on the beginning, they didn't work at all. What I call gentle steps, it's when I say that when we are trying to make special ministries, governmental institutions who aim themselves that they will fight with Russian disinformations. Such ministries, they are not useful at all because with even AI tools, which Russian propaganda and FSB officers use on a daily, every day, it's impossible to create counter-propaganda mechanisms on such an efficient way to block that millions of messages which they spread every single day in all social medias, in medias in general. So the idea on the beginning was to create something like a fact check organizations or people who will produce like messages to say that is fake and that is fake and that is also fake. But we don't have such amount of people which can do this in a such fast way as Russians do this. So the thing is that if you say a lie, to say that this is not a lie, and then the next step, it doesn't work, it doesn't help, because human's brain works in a way that if you hear the information, first information, the brain thinks that this information is automatically the truth. So after we like make a fact check, we say that no, that information, that first information was a lie. Our brain struggles with accepting this idea that that is a lie because it already is so comfortable not to do anything with the information it already received. So it says that because our even human being mechanism work in a way which helps to Russians to be efficient in their huge propaganda machine. That is why the only one way which helps and which started to help to Ukraine after we realized that our gentle mechanisms doesn't work is blocking everything, all sources which are used by Russians in the most efficient way in Ukraine. And first we blocked social medias of Russia as Odnoklassniki and Vkontakte. Then we blocked TV channels, Russian TV channels and online medias. And as we see, people are so lazy that they even don't use VPN to continue reading the Russian bullshit from that resources.
And they use
And
Telegram. I mean, it's the other one that stuns me how many Ukrainians, even in the military, are still using Telegram as a tool of communication. Even, hopefully not critical information, but sometimes it will be.
yes, Telegram is our biggest mistake. And Ukrainians did a huge mistake when we didn't realize that the threat on Telegram in the period then it only started to be popular in 2017, 18, 19 years. And unfortunately, journalists on that years, they started to use Telegram as the first source of information, making news, using the Telegram fake news even as a first source of information. And so that was a sign also for people who are reading news from medias that, oh, if medias are citating, making quotes from Telegram channels, why cannot we go straight to Telegram channels and to read news from there? And unfortunately, the Telegram started to become more and more popular. And if we would block Telegram on 2020, we would not have the trap which we have right now with Telegram. According to the researches which were made in Ukraine in this year and previous years, unfortunately, more than 70% of Ukrainians are reading news from Telegram on daily basis. And that is a catastrophe. Because if we even forget about the fact that they read news from Telegram channels, which can be Telegram channels made by Ukrainian medias or like not unknown people, but the fact that this application is in the telephones of every Ukrainian citizen means that basically you have like a FSB officer in front of you 24 hours, 7 days a week, because you will never be able to control what data and what information Telegram as an app will read from your phone. And if you just think that, oh, it's just innocent app and there is nothing which I need to afraid about it, you need to be ready that all your photos, all your messages, not only from Telegram, but from other apps will be copy pasted into some reports on some way or someday. And that is why, and the most threatening thing is that many policymakers and investigative journalists, they use Telegram, not only for reading news, but for messaging to each other. And that is a huge mistake, which our friends from European Union countries and from UK need not to repeat. That is why when somebody asks me to give only one advice about how to protect yourself from Russian disinformation campaigns, my one advice will be not download Telegram on your phone. And of course, not read news from Telegram channels. That is a very, very big danger. And unfortunately, our state power realizes right now that we are in the situation when if we even will block the Telegram and our Ukrainian users will not be able to use it, for our victory in general, it will be more like we will have more minuses than pluses, because so many platforms and so many tools right now in Ukraine are connected to Telegram that if we will lose them, we will lose even more rather than we will have as an advantage.
And TikTok is the other one, I would say, if you don't want to be subject to Russian and Chinese propaganda and indeed brainwashing, then delete TikTok as well. Um, I mean, this is extraordinary because let's dig into some of the individual narratives. And this is a theme that I'm trying to sort of research at the moment to try and put together a more structured way. But the idea is of, in simple terms, I call it inevitability and surrender. This is where Russia tries to prevent you from defending yourself and your interests. One, by dividing countries against themselves, or trying to convince them that Russia isn't the enemy and Russia isn't going to attack. And if it is going to attack, then actually it's better to be ruled by Russia than your own leaders. And there's many, many different narrative spins on this, but it all amounts to the same thing, which is to convince you that the victory of Russia is inevitable, that not only should you not try to resist because it's futile, but actually you'll be harming yourself if you do so. None of this is true, of course. Russian victory isn't inevitable. The Russian Empire isn't inevitable, and it certainly is not eternal, and it's not inexhaustible. But these narratives, in various guises, are repeated over and over. We've had President Trump saying them endlessly this last year in different permutations. We've got Witkoff, and many, many others, and not just these voices who it's easy to point to. You have Europeans saying the same thing, including the Belgian premier saying that behind the scenes, nobody in Europe, he says, believes Russia can be defeated. And that's, of course, backed up by fear, coercion, sabotage, and, of course, those psychological kinetic campaigns that reinforce the psychological effect. As a Ukrainian, how do you unpack that idea, and how do we start to build resistance against it?
First of all, we need to understand that Ukraine is a wall for the Western European countries. If Western European countries will not do everything to make this wall stronger, Russians will jump over the wall and do what they want in Western European world. And that is why right now it's very important for Western European countries to involve Ukrainian experts in the field of disinformation and in other fields to work closer to understand better how these attacks were organized in Ukraine and how Ukrainians were resisting to these threats, because we were struggling the most during the last 11 years. And we already know which methods work better and which methods doesn't work at all. And when I analyze the situation in European Union countries, I see that there is not much expertise in different, like on the governmental section and in expert section also. People don't understand and don't realize how Russians really work. And that is really, really threatening, because it's useless to create, like to invent bicycle. It's better to talk closer and to work closer with Ukrainians. We are happy to share our knowledge with our friends, because we believe that we need to forget about US, unfortunately, as a partner, as a very good partner, I mean, as a partner whom we can trust. We need to realize that we live in the same continent and we live in the same part of the world, and no one else cares about us but only we. So because Europe maybe didn't realize the threat from Russia during even from the beginning of full-scale invasion, they were not making such a big effort to resist the threat, which is real and which is right now everywhere in every country in European Union. And that is why right now we all need to make a big rush to do things much faster, because very well-known bureaucracy, which is our enemy number two after Russians. It really helps the Russians to make Europe weaker and to make false decisions. And that is what Russians really want Europeans to do, to make false decisions, not realizing all kinds of threats and not realizing how to fight and how to work with these threats.
And make no decisions at all. That's the other side of it, isn't it? Is it endlessly delay taking the actions that are required, attack while trying to convince the West that they're not attacking and has no intention of attacking. We've got all of this stuff on display here. Now, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to put it anyway. Do any Ukrainians who are really following events, or who have served on the front at any point since 2014, do any Ukrainians believe that there is a genuine peace process, that there is a sustainable peace process, there is a negotiated peace process that can be achieved with Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin and his minions?
No, the short answer is no. We don't believe to any ideas that peace agreement can be done right now, because it's an illusion which Russian propaganda just tries to create for Western world, not even for Ukrainians, because Ukrainians know Russians very well, and we realize that they will not stop until they will not be stopped. Russia will only when Russia will totally fail on the battlefield, and only when Russian soldiers will be put it away on the territory of Russian Federation, only then we can talk about some peace agreements. Before that, it's mission impossible, because we know that if even we will write some peaceful agreements, it will mean nothing on practical level. Since 2014, we made so many paperwork with Kremlin regarding the topic of Donbass, but the result you all know. They always did what they wanted. They never care about what they signed. It's only like informational trash to waste time, to let them kill more and more Ukrainians. Only this. And that is why it's even useful to make some debates about the format of these agreements, about who will sign it, when it will be signed. It's just a wasting of time. These agreements will mean nothing on the practical level.
And yet, Europe, despite all the evidence of the last 4 years, let's ignore for the moment the US, because clearly Witkoff, their chief negotiator, has been designated by the Kremlin, placed in that position at the behest of the Kremlin, and what he's saying is scripted in the Kremlin. So I think we can park that. But European leaders are not necessarily, most of them, aligned with the Kremlin. Most of them are, I would assume, not paid by, or, many of them, if you were to sit them down, would give probably quite a robust view on why Russia represents a threat. And yet their actions are telling a different story. And they do seem to be moving towards what could be described as a Minsk 3. And it raises rather a terrifying idea in my head, and that is that Minsk 1, Minsk 2, and even the Budapest memorandums were not about ensuring peace, but rather just making the Ukraine thing go away. Just doing something that is the minimal viable option, so that we don't have to think about it anymore. So we don't have to take action. So we don't have to think strategically, or have to say difficult things to our electorates. My fear is that we are heading towards a Minsk 3, and that will, be just as disastrous as Minsk 1 and Minsk 2.
If we will repeat our mistakes, it will only help the Russians. If you see that something doesn't work, Why you need to do this second time and third time and fifth time? It means you're extremely stupid if you repeat your mistakes. We already saw that means 1, 2, 3. It's a method which doesn't work at all. Russia understands only the language of strength. And document language is not language of strength. Language of strength is when they have no more weapon, no more people to fight, to kill Ukrainians. For this, we need to have more weapon and bigger army to resist to Russians. And when I hear these ideas that Ukraine, according to the peaceful agreements, cannot have the army with a certain amount of people, this is such a crazy idea because it's against the Ukrainian constitution. We are independent, sovereign state, and we don't need to ask somebody in the world how big our army needs to be. Only Ukrainian people can decide how big our Ukrainian army we want to have. So even the list of ideas which was mentioned in the US project or Russian project of the peaceful agreement, it's against, most of the points are against Ukrainian constitution. It seems for me that not only Russian lawyers, but American lawyers, they didn't even open the Ukrainian constitution and didn't read it.
Of course they
Just
haven't read
create,
it. Of course
they
they
just
haven't read
created
it.
ideas. They just created ideas randomly, which they took from the space, thinking that everyone will accept it without any concerns.
It also
But of
tells
course,
you perhaps the contempt that Trump has for his own constitution, because I'm sure he hasn't read the American Constitution, and I'm sure he actually doesn't care what's written in there because he'll do whatever he wants, just as Vladimir Putin will do what he wants, just as the Soviet Union under Stalin had a very well structured, incredibly well drafted constitution. Did they adhere to any of it? No, of course they didn't, because that wasn't the intention. I think there we're sort of missing all of that. So Putin has counted on Western weakness. He's counted on the lack of Western cohesion and moral courage. And he's counted on the fact that Europe would really not do anything to defend their interests until the bombs are falling on their heads. We haven't reached that point. I mean, we have sabotage, we have all sorts of the whole spectrum of warfare that Russia engages in, not fully kinetic against Europe yet, but of course we believe that's coming. So he was right. In some ways, he was absolutely right about what the European response would be to his full-scale invasion. However, he also believed that Ukraine would not put up cohesive resistance. He believed that he'd been able to corrupt Ukrainian society and especially governance to such an extent that it wouldn't be able to resist his invasion. In that respect, he was wrong. But it seems to me throughout these 4 years, he is still waiting. He's still waiting for this point where Ukraine will crumble. He's still waiting for this point there where one or two leaders will fall and then the whole society goes. It seems to me that that hasn't happened, and it also seems to me that he doesn't understand how Ukraine functions or Ukrainians think and behave.
yes, of course, he doesn't understand, but in the same time, he worked on his mistakes, which he did before the full-scale invasion, and right now he makes a lot of disinformation campaigns for Ukrainians in Ukraine to destabilize the situation and to make people not resist so much as they did on the beginning, and that is really threatening. And unfortunately, these methods and these campaigns, they are successful, and people are really depressed. And there is a big problem right now in the army, so we need to make an army reform to fix the problem. Otherwise, we will have not enough amount of soldiers on the battlefield. And that is a result of long-term and very efficient Russian disinformation campaigns, which was produced also in Telegram channels, mostly. And right now we realize these threats, and we have the horrible results of these campaigns. And hopefully our leaders in the Ministry of Defense will work on this and will fix the biggest problems which we have in the army, because otherwise we will lose more and more territories. No, we will not give up, of course, but it just will mean that Russian army will have more succeeds on the battlefield, and more people will be killed. And that is why we need to work on this very, very hard. And many military generals already are talking about this openly. They criticize some decisions, and they push the idea of army reform in Ukraine, but it doesn't go very fast, unfortunately. This is a problem we are still working on right now, and that is also shows the result of a massive campaign of Russians in Telegram, which we, as I told before, cannot block right now due to the reasons I explained.
And the sort of last question on this, if you can review how this year has gone and how next year is going to go, not making predictions because, I don't ask journalists or historians to make predictions because they like look at me with absolute horror, how dare you? And correctly, I think it's difficult to make predictions. But one thing that is almost certain, it seems to me, is that Russian aggression will continue. The degradation of Russia's economy will continue, but also this sort of knife edge balance of whether Ukraine has enough resources, money, human material to mount an effective resistance, that will continue to constantly be in doubt. It looks like we are where we were really at the start, which is the last to crumble, the last to fall apart will be the victor in this. And Ukraine's Western partners have a key role to play in ensuring that Ukraine is not the last one or the first one to crumble. Unfortunately, Russia has allies in India and China that are also minded to prevent it from falling first. Are we like to see just a continuation of this, with neither side being backed by their allies to achieve any kind of outright victory?
This year I was traveling a lot in different parts of the world. I was in Latin America, I was in Indonesia, I was in Africa. And of course, I visited Western countries a lot. Everywhere I was talking about the future of the war and what will happen next. I was talking to policymakers, with activists, with people who make decisions in their countries. And my biggest conclusion was that we finally, I hope, in Ukraine and in Europe, we realize that we are alone. And that is why we need to work much closer. This year, the illusion that US will protect Ukraine or they will protect Western European countries has gone. And as for me, it's a good step for next revolutionary steps for European countries. When you realize the threat, and when you realize that you are alone, and when you realize that you have the only one partner for European Union and UK, it's Ukraine, I mean, as a wall, and for Ukraine, it's Europe. The fact that we realized that we are here alone and we need to be all together, it's a good start for developing our protecting systems on all levels. Because this illusion that US will help, it was a big mistake from Ukrainian side, and I think for European Union countries side also. because of US gave that illusions for many, many years, not even years, but decades. What happened in Western Europe? You all know it became weaker. All the factories, like many factories which could be built in European Union countries, they were not built because US was saying that don't worry, we will work on producing weapon in US. You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to spend your money on it. Use that money for your social issues. Your electorate will be very happy about it, that you spend money not for tanks but for like higher salaries and more nicer taxes. And the fact that this illusion has gone give me like some optimism to look in the future. And I realize that right now what Ukraine can do is to give to Western Europe a little bit more time, not much time,
That
to
time is
develop.
rapidly running out. We've
Yes,
squandered
yes, yes.
4 years of that time.
Yes, yes, yes. This is time to strengthen themselves, and we are ready to give the expertise and all help which needed to help Europeans in this direction. And I think in the future we will develop our industrial sector, military industrial sector, in a way that Russia will not dare to attack us again.
We can only hope that that is how the year pans out. We only hope that the US remains neutral. The best we can hope for is that they do nothing at this point. The worst case scenario is that they actively assist Russia in its weapons development, in supplying components, and in informational warfare as well. Unfortunately, there are signs that America, at this point, this administration is minded to undermine Europe and its political forces. This, I'm sure, Lyubov, will form the basis of conversations through next year as we try to resist both Russian and potentially American interference in a pincer movement against liberal democratic values and institutions in Europe. Today, though, I wanted to wish you, if it's possible at all, a peaceful holiday. I know that it won't be peaceful, but I wish you a happy Christmas, and for there to be peace and security for you, your family, friends, colleagues, at this time of year.
Thank you, Jonathan. I wish to you and all the viewers of your channel also not even to imagine the Christmas, how the Christmas looks like in Ukraine. When I visit European countries and I see the people are smiling and the atmosphere is so relaxed, I look on these people and I'm so happy that there are so many not traumatized people around me. And I do wish you never know what is war. For that, you just need to be ready for it.
I'm proud to say that this series of Ukrainian Advent interviews is supported by the Steel Porcupine, a unique and powerful film about a country that refuses to lie down, a people who turn themselves into a fortress of needles when Russian tanks rolled in. The Steel Porcupine is an unforgettable cinematic experience that exposes Russia's campaign of extermination in Ukraine and the Ukrainian people's spirit to resist and prevail. It follows soldiers, volunteers, and ordinary people who decided that survival meant resistance, not submission. Introduced by Nate Vance, a former US Marine who fought for 3 years in Ukraine's defense, this documentary moves from the Bucha massacre to genocide endorsing Russian state propaganda media. The Steel Porcupine is a love letter to Ukraine and a battle cry. It is free to watch and has already had a great impact on policymakers as well as activists. There is, of course, a link in the description of this video and in the comments as well. You can get to the website where you can see both the trailer and the film for free. Created by the makers of the acclaimed To the Zero Line, this is another film about humanity that clearly states there is no such thing as neutrality when war crimes are being committed systematically by Russia and on a scale in Europe only comparable to World War II. Set to a haunting soundtrack featuring music by Philip Glass and blending rare archival footage with original material. It is an impactful work of art and storytelling, as well as being informative. I strongly recommend you watch it, but even the trailer itself is compelling.
I feel terrible about it because Ukraine is a very important country, and I feel a personal stake because I got them to agree to give up their nuclear weapons, and none of them believe that Russia would have pulled this stunt if Ukraine still had their weapons. And I believe Europe and the United States should continue to support Ukraine. There may come a time when the Ukrainian government believes that they can think of a peace agreement they could live with, but I don't think the rest of us should cut and run on them.
Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian military have been underestimated for a period of several years now. And ultimately, I'm convinced from my reflections in observing from an intelligence standpoint that they will fight with their bare hands if they have to, if they don't have terms that are acceptable to an enduring peace.
So this is a design for a 3D printed drone frame. The engines are mounted here. The drone motors are mounted here and here and here. What I can do is export these shapes into the slicer.
This film has absolute moral clarity. It does not both sides the war. It does not use neutral language. This is a film that says clearly who invaded whom, who is killing whom, and who is standing on their own land, fighting back, showing why Ukrainians will bleed for every meter. This film is not meant to comfort you. It's meant to arm you with clarity, with solidarity, and with the stubborn, spiky hope that democracies can still fight back and win.
Children are not stupid. They're just small, right? They're just small versions of us. They know exactly who the threat is. There's almost no families within Ukraine who have not lost a family member or have had a family member maimed by Putin and his army.
The Ukrainian people are very resourceful and they're very determined, and they've got a very good reason to be determined. You know, Russia wants to exterminate the Ukrainian nation and just enslave it and absorb it. So they've got every reason to do everything necessary to win this war.
Putin was super clear when he started this war that the existence of Ukraine as a sovereign and free country was an unacceptable affront to Russian security. He will not stop until Ukraine isn't a country anymore.
We have to put Ukraine in a position of strength, that it has the means to fortify and protect itself from the economic survival to the military resilience. It's basically turning Ukraine into a steel porcupine that is indigestible for potential invaders.
Poets have spent their entire lives trying to explain the horrors of war. I am no poet. Anyone who has seen what I have seen would probably think differently about the situation in Ukraine and what the Russians are doing.